Captain Vextal stood on the bridge of his patrol ship, watching the stars through the massive viewing window. The galaxy looked peaceful. It had been peaceful for thousands of years. The Galactic Council made sure of that. 47,000 years had passed since the humans disappeared. Most people in the galaxy had forgotten they ever existed. The few who remembered thought of humans as weak creatures who could barely fly between planets. They had vanished one day, leaving behind empty colonies and broken ships. Good riddance, most species thought. The Council ruled everything now. 10,000 worlds followed their laws. The strongest species worked together. The smart Zephyrians with their crystal bodies, the huge Corvins with their love of war, the ghost-like Nexari who could read minds, and many others. They had taken the old human worlds and split them up, like pieces of cake. Vextal was Corvin, built like a walking tank with thick gray skin and muscles that could crush metal. He commanded a patrol ship in the Outer Rim, where nothing ever happened. Pirates sometimes tried to rob cargo ships, but his weapons could turn their vessels into space dust in seconds. The galaxy was safe, ordered, and boring. His job was to watch for trouble, but there was never any real trouble. The Council's war fleets were too strong. Their ships carried weapons that could crack planets in half. No one was stupid enough to fight them. The communication officer, a thin Nexari named Liss, suddenly looked up from her station. Her pale blue form shimmered with worry. "Captain, I'm getting strange readings from the deep space sensors." Vextal turned his massive head. "What kind of readings?" "Something big is coming. Multiple ships heading toward our sector." Liz touched her crystal control panel with fingers that looked like smoke. "The energy signatures are unusual." "Pirates with stolen military ships?" Vextal asked. "It happens sometimes." "No, sir. These readings don't match anything in our database." Liz frowned, which made her ghostly face look even stranger. "Actually, they do match something, but it's impossible." "Show me." The main screen lit up with sensor data. Lines of numbers and energy patterns filled the display. Vextal was a soldier, not a scientist, but even he could see something was wrong. The energy levels were huge, bigger than anything he had ever seen. "Computer, identify ship types," he ordered. The ship's artificial brain worked for several seconds, which was unusual. Finally, it spoke in its calm voice. "Energy patterns. Match human technological signatures from historical database. Confidence level, 92%. Vextal laughed, a sound like rocks grinding together. "Humans? The computer is broken. Humans have been gone for 47,000 years. But Liz looked terrified. "Captain, I'm reading 17 separate ships. The smallest one is 3 kilometers long. The biggest..." She paused, checking. Her instruments again. "The biggest is the size of a small moon." That made Vextal stop laughing. Even the Council's largest battleships were only a kilometer long. Ships the size of moons didn't exist. They couldn't exist. The engineering was impossible. "Send a message to Council Command," he ordered. "Tell them we have unknown ships approaching, large unknown ships." "Already done, sir. They want us to investigate and report back." Vextal looked at the sensor readings again. 17 ships, each one massive, heading straight for the inner systems. They moved in perfect formation like they were controlled by one mind. Their speed was incredible. They would reach the first human colony worlds in just 3 days. "Set course to intercept," he said, "but keep our distance. If these things are as big as the sensors say, I don't want to get too close." His ship turned toward the approaching fleet. As they got closer, the readings became even more frightening. The unknown ships weren't just big. They were doing things that broke the laws of physics. Space seemed to bend around them. Time moved differently near their hulls. Energy weapons that got too close simply stopped existing. When they were still 1,000,000 kilometers away, something impossible happened. One of the huge ships sent a message directly to their communication system, bypassing all their security and shields, like they weren't even there. The message was in an old language that their computer had to dig out of historical files. Ancient human speech, translated into modern galactic standard. We are the descendants of those who left this place. We have returned to reclaim what was stolen from us. You have 3 days to leave our worlds. This is your only warning. The message ended, and space became quiet again. The 17 ships continued their steady approach toward the core systems, moving like unstoppable forces of nature. Vextal felt something he had never experienced before. Real fear. Not fear of death in battle, which was normal for a Corvan warrior. This was different. This was the fear a small animal feels when it realizes it's being hunted by something much bigger and smarter. Send everything to Council Command, he ordered, his voice quieter than usual. Full sensor records, the message, everything. Yes, sir, should we follow them? Vextal looked at the readings one more time. The ships were beautiful and terrible, their hulls covered in patterns that hurt to look at directly. They moved through space like sharks through water, graceful and deadly. No, he said finally. We're going back to base. Whatever those things are, we can't stop them. The Council needs to know what's coming. As his ship turned away, Vextal thought about the old stories his grandfather used to tell. Stories about the early days when the galaxy was wild and dangerous, before the Council brought order. Stories about species that could do impossible things, that had powers beyond understanding. He had always thought those were just stories. Now he wasn't so sure. The 17 ships continued toward the core systems, carrying something that would change the galaxy forever. Behind them, they left only questions and fear. The humans had come home. And nothing would ever be the same. On Council Command Station, alarms were ringing. Military leaders from every major species gathered in emergency meetings. The sensor data from Vextal's ship was impossible, but it was real. 17 massive ships with human energy signatures, heading straight for the old human worlds. General Thork of the Zephyrian High Command studied the data with his crystal mind, running calculations at incredible speed. The results made no sense. Ships that size should collapse under their own weight. Energy fields that strong should tear holes in space itself. How is this possible? Asked War Chief Brutok, the Corvan military leader. Humans were weak, primitive. They barely had fusion power when they disappeared. Perhaps they learned something during their time away, suggested Ambassador Thys of the Nexari. Her ghostly form flickered with worry. 47,000 years is a long time. Long enough to become gods? General Thork asked, his crystal body flashing with different colors as he processed the data. No one answered that question. No, one wanted to think about what it might mean. The galaxy had been peaceful for so long that most people had forgotten what real war looked like. They were about to remember. The Great Hall of the Galactic Council had never seen such panic. Representatives from 50 different species filled the chamber, their voices creating a noise like a storm. Fear hung in the air like smoke. Admiral Zekthor of the Zephyrian High Command stood at the center podium, his crystal body glowing with stress patterns. Around him, holographic displays showed the approaching human fleet. The images were beautiful and terrifying at the same time. Honored Council members, Zekthor said, his translated voice cutting through the noise. I must report that the impossible has become reality. The ships approaching our space are definitely human in origin. War Chief Brutok of the Corvans slammed his massive fist on his desk, making the metal bend. This is madness. Humans were nothing. We have their old ships in our museums. Crude metal boxes with primitive engines. Yet here they are, said Ambassador Thys, her ghostly form shimmering with worry. And they are unlike anything we have ever encountered. The main display showed detailed scans of the human ships. Each vessel was a work of art and engineering that shouldn't exist. Their hulls curved in ways that hurt to look at, covered in patterns that seemed to move when no one was watching directly. Energy readings showed power levels that could fuel entire star systems. Our best scientists have studied these readings for 18 hours, Zekthor continued. They cannot explain how these ships work. The energy fields around them bend space and time. Matter behaves differently near their hulls. They appear to exist in multiple dimensions at once. A Nexari senator raised her hand. What of their weapons? Can we determine their military capability? That is the most disturbing part, Zekthor replied. Our sensors cannot detect any weapons at all. Either they have none, or their technology is so advanced that we cannot recognize it as weaponry. This brought fresh waves of panic. Species that had built their power on military might suddenly face the possibility that their weapons were useless. Some council members began talking about surrender. Others demanded immediate attack. President Korth of the United Systems called for order. He was old even by Zephyrian standards, his crystal body showing the deep blue patterns of great age and wisdom. Tell us about their demands. Zekthor activated a new display. They have sent the same message to every human colony world. We are coming home. You have 3 days to leave. This is not a request. 3 days, War Chief Brutok roared. Impossible. Some of those worlds have billions of inhabitants. We cannot evacuate entire planets in 3 days. Perhaps that is the point, said a quiet voice from the back of the chamber. Everyone turned to look at Dr. Yinks, an ancient Corvan historian who rarely spoke in council meetings. Perhaps they want us to understand that we cannot comply. Perhaps this is not about evacuation at all. What do you mean? President Korth asked. Dr. Yinks stood slowly, his old body creaking. I have spent my life studying the ancient records. Before the humans disappeared, they sent one final message. Most people think it was meaningless, the ranting of a dying species. But I have always wondered. He activated his personal datapad, and words appeared on the main screen. Ancient human language translated into modern galactic standard. We go to learn from our betters. When we return, we will remember who stood with us and who stood against us. Choose wisely. The chamber fell silent. The message had been sent 47,000 years ago from the last human world before they vanished. Most historians thought it was just anger and fear. They said they were going to learn, Dr. Yinks continued. What if they meant it literally? What if they found teachers out there in the void? Ambassador Thys flickered with sudden understanding. You think they encountered another species? One more advanced than any of us? I think they encountered something that made them into this, Dr. Yinks said, pointing at the images of the impossible ships. Look at those vessels. That is not human technology evolved over time. That is something entirely different, something that breaks our understanding of what is possible. War Chief Brutok refused to accept it. Even if they learned new tricks, they are still human, still weak flesh and blood. Our fleets can destroy them. Can we? Zekthor asked quietly. Our most powerful weapons cannot even touch their ships. They move through space in ways that violate physics. What if we attack and they decide to respond with force? The question hung in the air like a threat. Everyone in the chamber understood the implications. The galaxy had known peace for 47,000 years because the Council's military power was absolute. If that power was meaningless against these new humans, then everything would change. President Korth called for a vote. All in favor of attempting diplomatic contact before the deadline? Hands and claws and tentacles rose throughout the chamber. Even War Chief Brutok voted yes, though he looked unhappy about it. All in favor of military preparation as a backup plan? Again, nearly unanimous agreement. Then we try talking first, Korth declared. But we prepare for war. As the council members filed out to prepare for the greatest crisis in galactic history, Dr. Yinks remained in his seat, staring at the images of the human ships. He had studied ancient history his entire life, but he had never seen anything like this. Somewhere in the deep void between galaxies, the humans had found something, or something had found them. They had become students of forces beyond imagination, pupils of entities that could reshape reality itself. And now they were coming, home to teach the galaxy a lesson about hubris. Meanwhile, in the outer systems, the 17 ships continued their steady approach. They moved in perfect formation as if controlled by a single mind. Space bent around them like water around stones. Time flowed differently in their presence. On the lead ship, Admiral Sarah Chen stood in a chamber that existed in 7 dimensions. Simultaneously, she looked human, but her eyes held depths that spoke of experiences beyond mortal understanding. Around her, crew members worked with technology that functioned more like art than science. "Admiral," reported her first officer, whose name was unpronounceable in any galactic language. "The Council is mobilizing their fleets. Should we consider this a hostile action?" Chen smiled, an expression that somehow contained both kindness and terrible certainty. "No. They are children playing with toys they do not understand. Let them bring their fleets. It will make the lesson more clear." She turned to look at a display showing the approaching council worlds. Billions of beings lived there, most of them completely unaware that their entire civilization was about to change forever. "Open a channel to the council station," she ordered. "Channel open, Admiral." Chen spoke in the ancient human language, her words somehow carrying meaning in every tongue across the galaxy. "We are coming home. We bring gifts of knowledge for those wise enough to accept them. For those who are not, we bring other lessons." The transmission ended, leaving the galaxy to wonder what those other lessons might be. The diplomatic ship Eternal Harmony drifted through space between the stars, waiting. It was the most advanced vessel in the Council fleet, designed for first contact with unknown species. Its hull gleamed with peaceful silver, and its weapons were hidden deep inside. The message it sent was clear: "We come in peace." Ambassador Thys stood in the main chamber, preparing for the most important conversation in galactic history. She was Nexari, one of the few species that could read thoughts and emotions across species barriers. If anyone could understand these returning humans, it would be her. "Ambassador," her aide whispered, "long-range sensors show the human flagship approaching." Thys nodded, her ghostly form shimmering with concentration. She had studied every piece of information about ancient humans, every scrap of their culture and history. They had been emotional creatures, driven by feelings rather than logic. Surely that hadn't changed, no matter what they had learned out there in the void. The view screen activated, showing the approaching human ship. Thys had seen the sensor readings, but seeing it with her own eyes was different. The vessel was impossibly huge, its dark hull stretching across space like a piece of the night sky itself. Patterns of light moved across its surface in ways that made her eyes hurt. "It's beautiful," whispered the ship's captain, a young Zephyrian whose crystal body flickered with awe. "It's terrifying," Thys corrected. Beauty and terror often went together when dealing with powers beyond understanding. As the human ship came closer, the Eternal Harmony's instruments began behaving strangely. Gravity fluctuated. Time seemed to slow down near the viewports. The artificial intelligence that ran the ship started speaking in languages that didn't exist. "This is impossible," the science officer reported, his voice shaking. "Their ship is causing local space-time distortions just by existing. The energy readings are, Admiral, this single vessel generates more power than our entire home fleet." Thys felt something she had never experienced before. As a Nexari, she could sense the emotions and thoughts of everyone around her, but from the human ship she felt nothing. It was like looking at a hole in the universe where thoughts should be. "Hail them," she ordered. The communication officer tried several times before getting a response. When the view screen finally activated, showing the interior of the human ship, Thys had to steady herself against a nearby rail. The chamber on the human ship looked like it existed in several dimensions at once. Walls curved upward into spaces that shouldn't fit inside the vessel's hull. Light came from everywhere and nowhere, casting shadows that pointed in impossible directions. Equipment that might have been computers or might have been art hummed with barely contained energy, and in the center stood a human. Admiral Sarah. Chen looked exactly like the humans from the historical records. 2 arms, 2 legs, a head with eyes and mouth in the expected places. But something was fundamentally different. Her eyes held depths that spoke of experiences beyond mortal understanding. When she moved, reality seemed to bend slightly around her. "I am Admiral Sarah Chen of the Human Expedition Fleet," she said. Her voice carried harmonics that made translation unnecessary. Every being on the Eternal Harmony understood her perfectly, regardless of their native language. "I am Ambassador Thys of the Galactic Council," Thys replied, fighting to keep her voice steady. "We welcome you back to known space and hope to establish peaceful relations." Chen smiled, an expression that somehow contained both kindness and terrible certainty. "Peaceful relations. Yes, we remember those concepts. We remember many things from our time here. The Council wishes to discuss the current situation," Thys said carefully. "The worlds you are approaching have been inhabited for thousands of years. Billions of beings call them home now. Our worlds," Chen corrected gently, "stolen from our children while we were away, divided up like prizes among species who thought we would never return." Thys felt a chill that had nothing to do with temperature. "Surely we can reach some accommodation? The galaxy has changed, much since your people left. We have achieved peace, prosperity, unity among all species." "Peace built on theft," Chen said. "Prosperity bought with our heritage. Unity achieved by forgetting those you wronged," she gestured, and the view screen showed images of the approaching Council worlds. "Tell me, Ambassador, what happened to the human graves on New Earth? The monuments to our dead on Kepler Prime? The libraries that contained our history?" Thys knew the answer, and her silence was enough. "Destroyed," Chen continued. "Paved over. Forgotten. You didn't just take our worlds. You tried to erase us from history itself." "That was long ago," Thys protested. "The beings responsible are dead. Their children's children are dead. Surely you cannot hold current generations responsible for ancient actions?" Chen's expression didn't change, but something shifted in the space around her. The laws of physics seemed to hold their breath. 47,000 years, she said quietly. That's how long we spent learning, growing, becoming more than we were. Our teachers were patient with us. They showed us wonders beyond imagination. They taught us that consciousness is the fundamental force of the universe, that reality itself can be shaped by will and understanding. She walked closer to the view screen, and Thys had the disturbing feeling that Chen was somehow stepping closer to her across the impossible distance between ships. "But they also taught us about responsibility," Chen continued, "about the consequences of actions, about the debts that accumulate when civilizations choose convenience over justice." "What do you want?" Thys asked, abandoning diplomatic protocol. "Justice," Chen replied simply. "Recognition, remembrance, and perhaps most importantly, humility from species who have forgotten that they are not the masters of the universe." The view screen showed new images now, other galaxies, strange and beautiful, filled with forms of life that defied description, ancient beings that existed in dimensions beyond physical space, civilizations so old that they remembered the birth of stars. "We learned from the architects," Chen explained, "beings who shaped the cosmic web itself. We studied with the consciousness shepherds, who guide the evolution of awareness across the universe. We became students of forces that your science cannot even detect." Thys realized she was trembling. What do you intend to do?" "We intend to come home," Chen said. "We intend to reclaim what was stolen, and we intend to teach the galaxy a lesson about humility that it will never forget." The transmission ended abruptly, leaving the Eternal Harmony alone in space with the impossible human ship. Thys stood in the sudden silence, her mind reeling from what she had learned. The humans hadn't just survived their time in exile. They had been chosen, selected as students by forces beyond imagination. They had become something new, something that transcended the limitations that bound every other species in the galaxy. "Ambassador," the captain whispered, "what do we tell the council?" Thys looked at the sensor readings one more time. The human ship was already moving away, heading toward the core systems with the unstoppable patience of a force of nature. "Tell them," she said quietly, "that everything we thought we knew was wrong. Tell them that the humans have returned, and they are no longer human, as we understand the term. Tell them that 47,000 years of galactic civilization is about to end." She paused, watching the impossible ship disappear into the void. And tell them to prepare for judgment. As the Eternal Harmony raced back toward Council space with its terrible news, the human fleet continued its steady advance. 17 ships carrying the accumulated wisdom of elder civilizations, moving toward a confrontation that would reshape the galaxy's understanding of its place in the universe. Behind them, in the deep void between galaxies, ancient eyes watched with approval. The students had learned their lessons well. Now it was time for them to become teachers. Admiral Zekthor stood on the bridge of the Sovereign Justice, flagship of the greatest war fleet ever assembled. Around him, 200 ships stretched across space in perfect formation, the combined military might of 17 species, armed, with weapons that could crack worlds and defended by shields that had never been broken. It was beautiful and terrible, this gathering of power. Corvan battleships like flying mountains, their hulls bristling with plasma cannons. Zephyrian cruisers that gleamed like crystalline daggers carrying quantum disruptors that could tear apart matter itself. Nexari stealth ships that flickered in and out of visibility, armed with weapons that attacked the mind as well as the body. Status report, Zekthor ordered, his crystal body glowing with combat readiness. All ships ready for engagement, reported his tactical officer. Weapons charged, shields at maximum, formation holding steady. Through the main view screen, they could see Kepler Prime hanging in space like a blue-green jewel. The first human colony world, now home to 3 billion council citizens, the symbolic heart of everything the humans had once been, and approaching it were 7 human ships. Only 7, against 200. The council admirals had thought it would be a short battle. They were about to learn how wrong they could be. Long-range sensors show the human vessels maintaining course and speed, the sensor operator reported. No change in formation, no response to our warning broadcasts. Zekthor felt a chill run through his crystalline form. The human ships moved through space with the patient certainty of natural forces. Asteroids falling toward a planet, gravity wells pulling in matter, unstoppable, inevitable, beyond negotiation. Sir, the communications officer called out. The humans are transmitting. Put it through. Admiral Sarah Chen appeared on the view screen, her image crystal clear despite the vast distance. Behind her, the bridge of her ship curved away into impossible geometries that hurt to look at directly. Admiral Zekthor, she said, somehow knowing his name without introduction. You have assembled an impressive fleet. 200 ships representing the finest military technology your civilizations have developed over 47,000 years. Zekthor found his voice. Admiral Chen, I call upon you to withdraw from this system. We do not wish to fight, but we will defend these worlds. Chen smiled sadly. Defend stolen property with stolen peace. How very predictable. She gestured, and the view screen showed images of the approaching human ships. Tell me, Admiral, what do you see when you look at our vessels? Zekthor studied the display. The human ships were enormous, yes, and their energy readings were beyond anything in the galactic database, but they showed no obvious weapons, no missile ports or beam emitters, just smooth hulls covered in patterns that seemed to shift when he wasn't looking directly at them. I see ships without visible weapons, he said carefully. Exactly, Chen replied. Because you still think in terms of weapons and shields, matter and energy. You have learned to use the forces of the universe, but you have never learned to become one with them. The transmission ended, leaving Zekthor staring at the advancing human fleet. 7 ships against 200. It should have been a massacre. All ships, he broadcast to his fleet, prepare to engage. Target the lead vessel and fire on my command. The Council fleet opened fire with everything they had, 200 ships unleashing the accumulated firepower of galactic civilization, quantum torpedoes that could unmake matter, plasma lances hot enough to ignite atmospheres, gravitational crushers that could collapse space itself, energy enough to sterilize entire star systems concentrated on 7 targets. The weapons simply vanished, not deflected by shields, not absorbed by armor. They ceased to exist the moment they entered the strange fields surrounding the human ships. Reality itself seemed to reject the concept of harming these vessels. "Impossible," whispered the tactical officer. "The energy readings show our weapons reached target range, but then nothing. They just stopped being." Admiral Zekthor felt something he had never experienced in 300 years of military service: complete helplessness. His fleet had just unleashed enough firepower to destroy entire worlds, and it had accomplished nothing. The human ships continued their advance, unchanged and undamaged. Then reality went insane. The human vessels began to phase in and out of normal space, their hulls becoming translucent. They moved through the council formation like ghosts, passing through solid matter as if it were empty air. Massive battleships simply passed through each other without collision, occupying the same space simultaneously. "How are they doing this?" someone screamed over the communication channels. The answer came as the human ships began to solidify. Inside the council vessels, reality reasserted itself with catastrophic results. The Eternal Warrior, a Corvan dreadnought, suddenly had a kilometer-long human ship occupying the same space as its engine room. Matter tried to exist in two places at once and failed violently, but there was no explosion, no fire or debris or screaming death. The Corvan ship simply stopped. Its engines went silent, its weapons powered down. Its life support continued to function, but everything else became inert metal floating in space. Across the fleet, the same thing was happening. Human ships appeared inside council vessels like supernatural predators, their hulls solidifying within the enemy's vital systems. One by one, the greatest war fleet in galactic history was being systematically disabled. "Sir," the sensor operator called out in terror, "the humans aren't destroying us. They're being surgical. Life support is intact on every disabled ship. They're saving the crews." Zekthor understood the message immediately. The humans could destroy without killing. They could dismantle entire fleets without spilling a drop of blood. The psychological impact was devastating. If they chose mercy, what would their wrath look like? "All ships, emergency withdrawal," he broadcast, but it was too late. His own flagship shuddered as something massive materialized inside the engineering deck. The lights flickered and died. The engines fell silent. The Sovereign Justice, pride of the Zephyrian fleet, became an elaborate life support system floating helplessly in space. In the sudden darkness, Admiral Chen's voice came through the emergency communicators, reaching every ship in the fleet simultaneously. This was a demonstration, not a battle. You came here thinking yourselves the masters of war, armed with the finest weapons your civilizations could devise. You have learned that there are forces in this universe that transcend your understanding of conflict. Emergency lighting flickered on across the fleet, showing 200 ships floating dead in space, their crews alive but their vessels transformed into powerless metal coffins. Your civilizations have had 47,000 years to grow in wisdom, Chen continued. Instead, you have grown in arrogance. You took our worlds, erased our history, and convinced yourselves that might makes right. Today you learn that there are always greater powers, always deeper mysteries, always consequences for your actions. On the bridge of the Sovereign Justice, Admiral Zekthor stared at his lifeless control panels. His fleet hadn't been defeated. It had been made irrelevant. The humans had demonstrated power so far beyond current understanding that resistance was meaningless. "What are you?" he whispered. Chen's voice answered as if she had heard him across the void. "We are what you could become, if you learned humility. We are what you might achieve if you abandoned the delusion that strength comes from domination. We are your children, returned from a longer education than you can imagine." The human ships began to withdraw, leaving the disabled fleet floating in space. Rescue vessels would arrive soon. The humans had made sure the distress signals were working. No one would die today, but everyone would remember. As the 7 human ships continued toward Kepler Prime, Admiral Zekthor realized that everything had changed. The age of council supremacy was over. The age of human transcendence had begun. Behind them, they left 200 ships and a lesson that would echo through history. Pride comes before the fall, and the universe always has one more surprise for those who think they understand everything. The galaxy would never be the same. The news of Kepler Prime spread across the galaxy faster than light itself. 200 ships of the Council's greatest fleet, floating dead in space with their crews alive, but their power gone forever. The humans had done the impossible. They had won a war without firing a shot. On Council Station, panic ruled the halls of power. Emergency sessions ran day and night as species representatives tried to understand what had happened to their invincible fleet. Some called for immediate surrender. Others demanded even greater military action. Most simply sat in stunned silence, trying to process the impossible. Ambassador Thys stood before the Great Assembly, her ghostly form flickering with exhaustion. She had spent 3 days analyzing the battle recordings, trying to understand how the humans had done what they did. "Honored council members," she began, her voice carrying across the chamber, "I must report that our understanding of reality itself has proven inadequate. The human ships did not use technology as we know it. They manipulated the fundamental forces that govern existence." President Korth leaned forward in his crystal chair. "Explain." "They phased through our ships by temporarily existing in multiple dimensions. They disabled our weapons by convincing local space-time that those weapons should not exist. They moved through our formations by becoming one with the fabric of space itself." Thys paused, struggling to find words for concepts that had no names. "They have transcended the distinction between matter and energy, between thought and reality." War Chief Brutok slammed his fist down, cracking his metal desk. "Magic. Impossible nonsense. There must be a scientific explanation." "There is," said a new voice from the chamber entrance. Dr. Yinks walked slowly down the central aisle, his ancient Corvin frame creaking with each step. In his hands, he carried a data pad containing information that would change everything. "I have been studying the deep archives," he announced. "Records from before the Council was formed, from the early days when our species first encountered each other. There are references to other civilizations, beings so advanced that they were considered myths." He activated his data pad, and the main display showed star charts from 47,000 years ago. Regions of space marked with symbols that meant forbidden in a dozen ancient languages. "The architects," Dr. Yinks continued, "the consciousness, shepherds, the reality weavers. Our ancestors spoke of them in whispers, beings who existed beyond the physical universe. They were teachers, guides for species that showed potential for growth beyond material existence." The chamber fell silent as the implications became clear. "You think the humans found them," President Korth said quietly. "I think the humans were chosen by them," Dr. Yinks replied. "Selected as students worthy of ultimate knowledge. 47,000 years of education from entities that predate our oldest civilizations." As if summoned by their discussion, the chamber's communication system activated without authorization. Admiral Sarah Chen appeared on the main screen, her image somehow more real than the room around her. "Distinguished representatives of the Galactic Council," she said, her voice carrying harmonics that made every language sound like music. "We offer you a choice." The chamber erupted in nervous whispers, but Chen continued without pause. "For 47,000 years you have ruled through strength. You have maintained order through fear. You have created peace by crushing those who disagreed with you. This has brought stability, but it has also brought stagnation." She gestured, and the view screen showed images of the galaxy. Millions of worlds locked in the same patterns for millennia. Civilizations that had stopped growing, stopped learning, stopped reaching for something greater. "We offer an alternative," Chen said. "Growth through wisdom, strength through understanding, peace through knowledge of our place in the greater cosmos." President Korth found his voice. "What do you want from us?" "Humility," Chen replied simply. "Recognition that you are students, not masters. Acceptance that the universe contains mysteries beyond your current understanding." She showed them new images now, other galaxies, strange and beautiful, filled with forms of life that defied description. Ancient beings that existed in dimensions beyond physical space. Civilizations so old that they remembered the birth of the first stars. The teachers are patient, Chen explained. They have watched your development for millions of years, waiting to see if you would grow beyond the need for domination. Some species have succeeded. Others have chosen to remain in their limitations. What happens to those who refuse? Asked Ambassador Thys. Chen's expression grew sad. They continue as they were, locked in their small understanding until they fade into irrelevance. The universe is vast, and it has little patience for those who refuse to grow. War Chief Brutok rose from his seat, his massive frame trembling with rage. You threaten us with extinction if we do not bow to your authority? No, Chen said gently. We offer you transcendence if you choose to accept teaching. The choice, as always, is yours. She showed them one final image, human children learning impossible mathematics from beings made of living light, while in the background, entire galaxies danced to harmonies that existed beyond sound. We will establish schools on the recovered, human worlds, Chen announced. Any species that wishes to learn is welcome. Any being that chooses growth over stagnation will find teachers waiting. The transmission began to fade, but Chen's final words echoed through the chamber with the weight of prophecy. The age of rule by force is ending. The age of growth through wisdom begins now. Choose carefully. The universe is watching. The screen went dark, leaving the council chamber in stunned silence. Over the following days, the galaxy began to change. Some species, led by the warlike Corvins, retreated into isolation, unable to accept their diminished status. They built walls around their worlds and pretended the humans didn't exist. Others, particularly the younger civilizations, flocked to the human schools. They came seeking knowledge and found transformations beyond imagination. The humans taught not just science and technology, but ways of thinking that opened doors to realities beyond current understanding. The Zephyrians, with their crystal intellects, proved particularly apt students. Within months, some of their scholars were learning to manipulate matter with thought alone. The Nexari, already sensitive to non-physical dimensions, began to explore realms of consciousness that their ancestors had only dreamed of. But perhaps the most profound changes came to individuals rather than entire species. Beings who had lived ordinary lives suddenly found themselves capable of extraordinary things. A Corvin farmer learned to help plants grow by singing to the quantum fields that connected all life. A Nexari artist began painting with colors that existed in dimensions beyond visible light. The galaxy split into two groups, those who embraced the new possibilities and those who clung to the old ways. The humans made no effort to force change on anyone. They simply existed. A quiet presence that reminded everyone that the universe was far stranger and more wonderful than anyone had imagined. Admiral Sarah Chen stood in her impossible ship, watching the transformation begin. Around her, her crew worked with technology that was indistinguishable from art, machines that functioned through harmony rather than force. Are we doing the right thing? Asked her first officer, a being whose true nature existed in mathematical concepts rather than physical form. Chen smiled, an expression that somehow contained both infinite patience and infinite sadness. We are doing what our teachers did for us, offering choice. Some will grow, others will fade, but all will have the opportunity to become more than they were. She turned to look at a display showing the galaxy in its entirety. Millions of worlds, billions of species, all connected by threads of possibility that most could not yet see. The universe is vast and full of wonders, she said quietly. We have learned this truth. Now we pass it on to those ready to receive it. The humans had returned not as conquerors, but as gardeners. They would tend the galaxy's growth, offering wisdom to those who sought it, and patience to those who did not. The age of forced unity was ending. The age of chosen transcendence had begun. And in the deep void between galaxies, ancient eyes watched with approval as their former students became teachers in their turn. The cycle continued as it always had, as it always would. The universe grew, one choice at a time.